So the last set of sort of conversation that we had with Rory up here, and then we take to the panel. I'm just sort of dovetailing off what Mitchell said, and your remit of global role overall. You guys sort of do everything. You're an integrated agency, right? Where is the scale in this? That was the question with which I was left, right? Because I'm like, okay, well, actually, if your storytelling adjacency does matter, right? The content that you're aligning your brand beside is important and relevant. So then I'm thinking, all right, well, from an activation perspective, that's hard, right? And then from a storytelling perspective, we know that's hard because sort of making, good stories isn't an art or a science. And I would like to hear more about how we make that a bit more scalable. But
so I would say, first, let me frame it up just a little bit. So the value in branded entertainment, branded content, comes from two places, I think. One, just that interruption advertising is becoming less effective, right? And the second is that with so many mobile devices out there, as you were just discussing, and with people shifting, bandwidth speeds improving and people shifting their behavior and willing to consume video and excited to consume video through their mobile device, advertisers have an opportunity to deliver content that is of value, and if they do, consumers are gonna watch it and they're gonna share it. And so I think the scale is in creating something of value, creating something great. I mean, we just did, and I think the scale is everywhere, right? So we just did work with Nike, celebrating the athletes who were participating in a recent soccer event that occurred. And so we're their digital media agency in the U.S. And this 4-minute video that was created by Wyden, and it was great work, was viewed massively. 240 million, two different videos because they had two storylines that connected, and 240 million views and counting. And we also saw that we're part of the beta with Twitter where we had it, the video natively, so you could play it right there in the screen, in the card. And that was actually the most, in all of the video work that we've done, that was the most shared video that we've created for them.
Okay.
And they've created a lot of great content over time.
So not to take anything away from Razorfish or Nike,
yeah,
but it's Nike. And I mean, those are stories that are interesting, right? So if I'm trying to sell toilet paper, how do I make that?
Yeah, but so what? Make your brand interesting. There's no excuse.
But that's exactly what I'm asking you is how do you do that?
Yes, Nike happened, but why? Are shoes inherently exciting? No, they've embraced and empowered people. They believe that everybody has an inner athlete.
But that's why they've attached to athletes, right? So
right.
It's the story of the athletes, not of the brand per se.
So every brand has to understand where their value is.
Okay, and how do you tell me how shepherding them through that process? Because that's the issue of
every brand is in a different place, right? Some get that and are far down the path and have been doing it forever, like Nike when they were doing paid advertising. I mean, it's always been focused on the athletes and the not just the professional athletes, but the athlete, the consumer. And some brands kind of get it and need help, translating it to branded entertainment. And some don't really get it at all and really are just talking about themselves and pushing their product.
Right.
And that's, it just takes education.
But tell me about that, because I don't have that sort of skill. I don't come from creative, and those of us that are on kind of the media side of the business, like how do you make a brand get comfortable? Because it goes back to the idea, I liken it to social, where a CMO comes into your agency and says, I would like 1 million likes on Facebook, right? I want to do branded content. And how do you get them from the idea of telling their brand story to telling a story that's meaningful to their consumer? Like how do you straddle that chasm?
Well, I think, the client has to get there over time. You have to educate them over time, right? And I think, take Mercedes a few years ago, they weren't in social at all. And the CMO at Mercedes, he was the CMO, now he runs CMO, or Mercedes North America. To his credit, he stood up and said, I don't know exactly where this is going, but I know this is important. We've got to do something big. And so we did the tweet race at the time. This was 2 or 3 years ago, 4 years ago. And since then, what we've done is most of the work we do for them online really taps into innate behaviors that are happening. And I think the key is having the trust of the client that you understand that native online behavior and you can tap into it. So a lot of the work that we do with them taps into kind of that meme culture, right? So but we make it very brand appropriate. So we're looking to connect with Gen Y, as you probably know. A lot of people in millennials view Mercedes as a brand for their father or grandfather, right? So we wanted to make the brand relevant because they were launching 2 vehicles in the U.S. The second one is launching this year that are at a lower price point and are for someone who's 28, 32 years old. And so take the most recent work called the car's GLA. It's called GLA Packed, and it's capitalizing on that meme of people creating a kind of a display of all the things that are in their suitcase before they go on a trip, taking a Vine or a picture, posting it, and getting a ton of attention. And so what we did was we created a campaign called GLA Packed, where we took because the car is all about adventure and travel. It's a SUV, and so we took a imprint of the back of the vehicle and the storage area of the vehicle, and hooked up with ambassadors and influencers in the social space, had them take pictures of what they would take on their trip, and it's spread like wildfire. So tons of consumers are submitting their videos, their images, and because it very much taps into, it aligns with the brand and the product, but it also taps into something that's happening in social.
So how does the inherent sort of channel neutral nature of brand content, how do you be sort of calculated and thoughtful about that, right? Like the social component of that when it comes to actually developing the brand story. And we were talking about mobile, right? So the difference between a creative and a creative technologist. How do you bring all of that, because you're not going to get it in one function or one group of the agency, but how do you get all those people at the table and get them on a course moving in the same direction?
Yeah, I mean, we really celebrate bringing multiple disciplines together. It's very much part of our culture. So it's not that tricky, and we try to push it to the next level by bringing outside influences in as well. So we did something recently with Unilever and Google where we have these hack sessions, and this one was actually facilitated by Google, but it was we had creatives, technologists, planners from our side, and Google was at the table, and as was Unilever, and we saw that it was with their hair care category, and we saw that there were 1 billion searches a month related to hair care, which is a lot. You want your scale? There it is.
That's a lot.
And so that we teamed up with Unilever to do a category-wide play where we had video bloggers who would basically post, who were well-known, had large followings, would post videos in response to questions. And so it's just launched. It's really still in beta. It's soft launch, and it's gotten 6 million views already. So,
okay, so I'm going to hang on to a word you just said. I think it's very, very interesting to use the description of in beta for what is a content campaign, right? I mean, I think that lends itself to, and that's why I really wanted to sort of, because of your role sort of sitting over top of all the functions, I really want to understand how you're getting, because the precursor to me of getting your brands to think differently and your clients to think differently is you guys have to be thinking differently, right? And what have you seen in the last, let's say, 24 months is the biggest difference in how the agency functions for success?
One of the biggest differences that I think clients need to start to embrace, and agencies as well, is the notion that, it used to be that paid media was planned, months, years in advance. It was all allocated. And marketing in general has been a very fixed thing, right? There's a campaign cycle, and then you move on to the next assignment, you move on to the next brief. And so one of the things that we're seeing is now, in this more real-time world where you're putting content out there, there's more of an ability, if you can do this effectively, to use the paid media as fuel to get the fire started, or where you're seeing sparks to really ignite a big fire. And so one of the big changes, I guess, that I'm highlighting is this notion that paid media is not, it is on the front end, but it's also should be, there should be slush funds available to put the fuel where it needs to be.